emergency room.
And as soon as I got in there, it was like frantic panic. Everyone was just sticking needles in there. Every time they put a needle in me, I said thank you. So they like stuck one in my neck. I was like thank you. Put one in my arm. I said thank you. And it was like then they had to drain my lung. So they had to put a drain through my rib cage. Anybody who's had that done will know how painful it is. But I was just like thank you. Like couldn't feel a thing at this point. Took me to my stomach, and they gave me a full blood transfusion as soon as I got in there. So when I got stabbed, it was like every beat on my heart felt the darkness closing in. And then once they gave me this blood transfusion, it was like every beat in my heart, I just felt light just coming back into my eyes again. I could start to see, I could start making out shapes, I could start to speak a little bit quicker, felt like I could move. I said, I feel alright now, I'm going to get up. You know, no, stay down. So I was like, I stayed on the bed, but I was very like, so I was like, okay, I'm going to be fine now. So they were like, we're going to take you into surgery now. So they started wheeling the bed to theatre. And I see my mum in the corridor, and she just grabbed my hand.
Your mom was there already?
Yeah,
they managed to get hold of her?
Yeah, so they managed to go and get her from my house and blue lighted her straight to the hospital, and she was just crying hysterically. I said, Mum, don't worry, listen, I love you, I'll be out in a minute, it's going to be fine. And she was just like holding my hand.
And did you believe that when you said that to her?
Yeah. Genuinely, I just thought I'm going to be fine now.
Yeah.
And then, as they were wheeling me off, the nurse said to me, I bet that was nice to see you, Mum. And I was like, yeah, it was. And then, all of a sudden, I felt like warm just go over my chest. Like someone just like poured a hot cup of tea on me. And basically the wound had ruptured. I'd started going into cardiac arrest and then just started running with the beds. I just remember the doors slamming open. Everything was sort of moving like super quick again. They got me into theatre. They basically take me from one bed to another. I feel them sort of throwing me around. And then as they get me onto the second bed, I get sick. So I don't know if I'm in shock or what it is, but I just remember vomiting and the nurse is sticking a needle in me and my eyes just closing and me just hearing myself flatline. I had this long beat and it was in this darkness. So
what was that like?
Peaceful. Yeah, weirdly like just it felt like I was having an out of body experience, you know what I mean? It wasn't like, although everything was like sheer panic, I was in shock, I was getting sick, I was in cardiac arrest, all these things were happening. It was almost like I was just watching it happen from my perspective. It was really strange. And then when I went to sleep, or when I died essentially, it was just dark. So I woke up. Just nothingness. Yeah, just nothing. And then I just remember like briefly having like a conversation which felt like it was with myself but not with myself, and it was just sort of like, you're gonna be fine, you're gonna be okay. And then I woke up in intensive care the day later, where I basically found out where he'd stabbed me was through my lung, out the other side, through my aorta, which is my main artery, and into my heart. So everything it could have possibly hit. You know, it wasn't one of those, it was a millimetre from here, or, do you know what I mean, if it was this far,
it was right in there.
It was just straight in, do you know what I mean, went straight through out the other side, into my heart. So, I woke up the next day, and I remember I couldn't speak, but I was
and
like...
did they, in theatre, I think I read that they had to, like, massage...
That's right,
manually massage your heart?
Yeah, so my heart stopped beating 3 times. And on the 3rd time, a nurse had to physically put her hands into my chest and beat my heart for me to keep me alive. So I woke up the next day. Well, I say it was probably for hours after surgery, which again was like the doctors had said, you know, I was in an induced coma, so I shouldn't have really been waking up out of it as soon as I did. But for whatever reason, I was like jumped up, I was like trying to speak, trying to explain to people. And the nurse was coming over, she pushed her hand into my forehead and just pulled this big white tube out of my throat, which was like helping me breathe basically. And I was like hugging the nurse, and she was like, your mum's there, hug your mum. So I grabbed my mum, grabbed my mum's boyfriend, gave him a hug, kissing him. And just the sheer overwhelmed that I was alive, and then back to sleep.
Okay. You didn't actually remember much of the attack at first. When did it start to come back to you? What had happened?
So the police had come and visited me in hospital when I was in intensive care, and they basically was like, do you remember what happened? And I was like, yeah, and they were like, what, can you walk us through it? Like, who was it? Where did you meet him? What did he look like? And as I started talking about it, it started coming back to me what had actually happened. And then, I walked them through the same instance that I've just walked you guys through. And at the part where I said he stabbed me, I basically just broke down into tears. It was like a sudden realisation that I'd been stabbed. And my heart rate was spiking on the monitor. Obviously just being so like overwhelmed and upset. And the nurse was coming running and she was like, you just need to leave. Like, he's just had open heart surgery. You need to go. You need to get out. And I was just sitting there just like in shock, like as if this has actually happened to me. It was wild. I think the first week was, I was so dosed up on morphine and drugs that I didn't know where I was, so it didn't really make any sense at the time. It was sort of like, I'm recovering here, I need to be here. The nurse was coming around every day, so I was getting like a needle in my stomach every evening to stop like blood clots. I was having to get bed bathed. I was completely like immobile that first week. And then when they moved me to a ward, the doctor would come round and he basically said, he was like, he's a soldier. He was like, take his drains out, he'll be fine. And he was like, you know how lucky you are, don't you? He was like, you shouldn't have survived that. But he was like, here you are, it's a miracle. And so he took my drains out and my lung collapsed again.
No.
So
You're like, thanks for
yeah,
that.
legit,
Yeah.
mate. Yeah, clearly not that much of a soldier. But then,
But
so
why do you think you survived the attack?
genuinely, I think it was because I was so fit from boxing. I didn't smoke, didn't drink. I was very fit, very active. What they basically told me after was I had a very athletic heart rate, so that even when the adrenaline had spiked, my heart rate wasn't beating as fast as a normal person, so I didn't lose blood as fast.
Right.
So I was just able to stay conscious and keep blood circulating in my system for longer.
How long were you on the ward?
I was on the ward for a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a cardiac ward where everybody in the beds around me were old. They were having like pacemakers fitted. Some was in there with like bypasses. So I was the only young one, really.
Were you really popular?
Well, yeah, so I had loads of friends and stuff from college and that coming up and shouting, and then I had this one moody geezer in the corner, like, well, we're trying to keep it down. I was like, I'll just die later. So we had, so we had just all these, had people coming from college. So yeah, there was always people there, always. I had all my family there, all my friends there. So I was probably like day 2 of being on the ward. I was up and walking. And then it was one day, like, my mum had come and met me, and she was like, do you want to go to the canteen? And we got there, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And as I got to the door, there was like a load of army veterans in there that had just come back from Afghanistan. And a guy opened the door for me, and he had no legs, he was sitting in the wheelchair, and he was like, here you go, mate. And it just dawned on me, like, mate, get a grip, you know what I mean? No, it could have been much worse. Exactly. And I think from then I was sort of just ready to get back. I didn't want to be in the hospital anymore. I was like, I just want to get back home. Yeah, so I was out there in 2 weeks.
Pretty much as soon as he got home, he was ready to get back up and running. He wanted life to be normal again.
I was doing a night course in electrics, so I wanted to get straight back to that to make sure I get my qualification. I didn't go back to college, but I just thought I don't want to deal with all the questions from everybody. But I wanted to get back to work, so I rang my boss, who I was working on the property development with, and was like, have you got any work for me? I'll come back and do what I can. And I rang Tottenham, and he was like, oh, my discount, you know what I mean? so I'll go back there as well. And I wanted to get back fighting, so it was as soon as I could, I was trying to just get everything back in order.
Like as if it was
yeah,
just normal,
yeah,
as if nothing happened.
Yeah, and everybody was going, you need to slow down, you need to slow down. And I was like, no, I ain't letting it hold me back, I'm just getting back to where I was. Open heart surgery was the most difficult part of the recovery, because my chest was held together by 8 rings of metal. So it would start to buckle if I had anything like too weight bearing on me. So I used to carry these steel toe cap boots to my night course in electrics, and I used to have to wear the rucksack on the front of my chest and not on my back, because if you pull my shoulders, I felt my chest sort of
opening.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was in no position to fight, and I was in no position to really be training, but I was like, no, I'm getting back to it. So that's what I done. I started running initially, and I started getting back to training, and I was getting fit enough to fight. Like you say, my coach said you need to go get medical before you go any further. You know, like this isn't just a broken arm, mate. You've been stabbed in the heart. I was like, yeah, you're right. So I went to the doctors, and it was like it was before it could even leave my mouth. She was like, no. And I was just like, what do you mean? Like, surely you can sign me up or do something.
Yeah, there's gotta be a way.
Yeah, maybe like 6 months from now. Or she was just like, no, like, it's not
Never.
it's not gonna happen. So, which at the time crushed me, because it was sort of like I tried my hardest to sort of get everything back on track, and it was like, okay, rug was pulled from beneath my feet again, and it was sort of like
you can't have the life you had before.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a different life.
yeah, completely.
We're gonna take a quick break for the news, but stay with us to hear how Kieran handled his new reality.
This is the BBC World Service, and for the forum, Izzy Lawrence is exploring the story of where we buy our groceries. We're going shopping.
In the 19-teens, self-service meant that stores then had to put prices on items, so now you could have a different kind of comparison shopping. That was really controversial back in the day.
There is no doubt that in many parts of the world, supermarkets have transformed what food we buy and what we eat. The collective elements that make up the modern supermarket have been developing.
This is a really good example of how you can slow people down, speed people up, not in a kind of malicious way, but to help them shop certain areas.
I'll be following their growth from the United States 100 years ago to their almost global reach today. The Forum, Supermarkets, Saturday at 12 GMT.
Coming up on Outlook on the BBC World Service, Kieran Quinlan had survived the attack, but now he just had to find a way to survive what came next.
It was almost I was looking for people to be like, do you know what to do here? Do you know what to do here? And everyone was like, oh, you're all right, and go and speak to someone. Nobody knows how you're going to feel after you get stabbed in the arm. And I think in that moment, it was I took all the power back. I'm responsible for myself, I'm responsible for my life, I'm responsible for everything the way it turns out, and it's on me. I need to give it a good go.
That's after the news.
BBC News with Neil Nunes. Houthis in Yemen say they've sunk a British-registered ship which they attacked in the Gulf of Aden on Sunday. The claim hasn't been verified. Earlier, the UK government said the Rudimar had been abandoned and its crew had been rescued. A judge investigating the assassination of Haiti's former president Jovenel Moïse has brought charges against his wife. The court document says Martine Moïse conspired with the former Prime Minister Claude Joseph to kill the president nearly 3 years ago. She denies involvement. Ukrainian officials say a Russian pilot who defected to Ukraine last year has been found dead in Spain. Maxim Kuzminov's body was reportedly discovered in an underground garage near Alicante. A website run by a major gang of cyber criminals appears to have been taken over by law enforcement agencies. The group known as Lockbit sells tools to hackers to carry out ransomware attacks. Somalia's ambassador to the UN has told the Security Council that Ethiopia's agreement with the breakaway region of Somaliland amounts to a declaration of war. The deal gives Addis Ababa access to the sea in exchange for recognition of Somaliland's independence. Two of the largest credit card companies in the United States have announced plans to merge. Capital One has agreed to buy Discover in a deal worth more than $35 billion. Australia says its fleet of warships will more than double over the next decade. The government's announced plans to invest more than $7 billion in the Navy. And astronomers have discovered what could be the brightest object in the universe. The quasar shines about 500 trillion times brighter. World News.
Hello, and welcome back to Outlook. I'm Aussie Books. We've been hearing from Kieran Quinlan, who at just 17 years old was violently attacked, out of the blue, by a man on a bus. He'd been stabbed. The knife went through his lung and into his heart. He barely survived. His attacker would end up being convicted and been sentenced to a minimum of 5 years in prison. But of course, Kieran's life was totally changed. He was no longer a happy-go-lucky teenage boy, boxing, hanging out with his friends, going to college, and earning. He found it difficult to recalibrate, to figure out who he was supposed to be. At his lowest moments, he'd end up feeling pretty desperate.
Once that I'd basically been told I couldn't box, I basically sort of went off the rails and I started going out, drinking, taking drugs and getting into fights with just groups of people that would look at me funny, or maybe they were slightly aggressive towards me, or they'd been aggressive towards a friend.
And this was a few months after?
This was probably about 6 months later now.
Yeah.
And I think I was suffering anyway from obviously the attack and being like demasculinated by somebody doing that to me in the first place, when I've seen myself as someone that could handle themselves. And now my boxing career has been taken away from me. You started to see who your true friends are, and I was just not in a good place at all. And it was almost like any time that an interaction or altercation would start to happen, my brain would go 0 to 100. It was never like, I'm going to have a fight with this person, or I'm going to have cross words with this person. It was like, this person's trying to kill me and I need to defend myself. And it would just erupt into like this huge all-out brawl. This was a common occurrence, like, you know, I'm talking multiple times a week.
Multiple times a week, getting into just random
I
fights.
could be walking home from work, could see groups of lads with their hoods up, and I'd just get triggered. And I'd just start fighting with groups of lads in the middle of the road. And it got to the point where it was worrying because I couldn't control it. I didn't know what was happening to me. So I remember going to the doctors, and that's when they diagnosed me with PTSD. And it was, you know, your fight or flight response is just switched on constantly. I was constantly on the threat. I was having panic attacks all the time. I couldn't sit on a bus. I couldn't be in crowded rooms. I couldn't. It was just, yeah, I was just a bit of a mess, to be honest. And I genuinely, at the time as well, I genuinely thought everybody like was out to get me almost. I looked like a paranoia. So I thought if I go to the gym and I make myself a little bit more, you know, of a presence, because I'd lost so much weight in hospital, and I was like, you know, I hated the way that I looked anyway. I was not confident, and I was just hyper aggressive. And I thought, if I go to the gym, I'll make myself a little bit bigger, I'll make myself a bit more of a presence. Maybe these people won't want, you know, to.
Right, so you didn't think it was like a mental thing?
No.
It was, yeah.
I genuinely thought they were just trying to hurt me.
You know, while you were struggling with
Mhm.
PTSD, panic attacks, you weren't sleeping, were you talking to someone about it? Like friends, your mom maybe?
I just closed off, and I think the thing is, I explained it the way that I explained it. But if you was to ask any of the guys around me, they would have said I was happy, I was fine, I was, you know, they'd see me go in these situations, but I'd almost turn it into a joke after. Like, it wasn't as bad as it was.
Yeah.
When I
How
was-
about your mom? I mean, she must have noticed something. Wasn't
Yeah,
quite
no,
right.
she wasn't. But she wasn't happy with me, and I think I was being difficult to communicate with, as with everyone. I was sort of just shut
Closed
off
off,
and just
yeah.
whatever, I'm going out, and I just got out of it. So yeah, it was time as well. Nobody really spoke about mental health. It wasn't like a common occurrence. I was struggling with insomnia. I didn't know what insomnia was. I hadn't slept for over a week. I'd have 2 hours and maybe an hour sleep, wake up right away, and I'd go for a walk. And I'd walk from my house for as far as I could until I got tired, and then I'd turn back round because I was just like, I can't sleep, I can't stop thinking. I wouldn't go with anyone, I wouldn't talk to anyone. Sort of trying to process everything, and I didn't want to worry anybody, I didn't want to stress anybody out, so I was just like, I'll be fine.
But as the months went on, Kieran kept working out. He felt stronger, clearer in his head. Things did slowly start to get better. It wasn't like everything was perfect, but he seemed to be moving on. Got an apprenticeship at a local gym. He'd realized this was the industry he wanted to work in, one way or another. And he met someone too.
I met Laz a year after I'd been stabbed, so I was still in this stage where I was like fighting all the time. I was still working things out, and like I say,